All right, good morning. Welcome, everybody. It's 10 o'clock here in Texas. We are being joined by a number of high-profile localization people, both on the buyer and the client side. We have Greg Guttmann from RWS is with us, Edwin Trebels, Church of God, Eddie Wise from 40Q, Sean McCarthy from Lucky Orange, Fabio Minazzi from Translated, and Jochen Hummel from Corion and ES Team. And before we get started, I would like to take maybe 10 to 20 seconds for everyone to introduce themselves quickly to the participants. Go ahead, Edwin. Maybe we'll start with you, and then we'll just do a quick go around and let us know who you are and why you're here.
Yep. Thanks, Stefan. It's good to be with you all. I'm Edwin Trebels. I'm the director of LangOps at the Philadelphia Church of God, which is a global nonprofit. I've been in localization for just over 20 years now. I manage multilingual, multimedia communication, and we publish about 4.5 million words every year. I'm very excited about all the recent cutting edge technology as combined with human expertise. So I'm excited to be part of this roundtable to see if we can move the needle a little bit on our collective understanding of what might be possible at this point in time.
All right, sounds great. Eddie, who are you?
Yeah, how's it going, guys? Eddie Wise, VP of Growth at 40Q. 40Q is actually a WordPress engineering agency. We specialize in creating scalable and custom solutions, custom CMS solutions. One of our big offerings is localized websites. I've been doing that work for about 15 years, creating localized sites either in different languages or translating specific content or creating specific regional websites for marketing purposes. And yeah, I think right now it's one of the most exciting times to sort of be in this space, in the localization space. Things like AI and advances in technologies are really shaping this to be one of the best years for localization.
Awesome. We look forward to putting your feet to the fire. Fabio, you just won the pick at World a couple of weeks ago. I'm super excited to have you here because you're a bright mind in the localization space. Give us a quick introduction.
Okay, yeah. Hi, everyone. I've been in localization for about 30 years, from software localization and video game localization for many years. My background is in physics, but I always liked communication among people. So now I'm helping translate it with their audiovisual operations. And I'm in charge of a few special projects. One of them is actually the one that presented the localization, where to give voice to people with the speech impairment, but many others as well.
Awesome. Sean, go ahead.
Thanks, Stefan. I'm Sean from Lucky Orange. Lucky Orange is a conversion rate optimization toolkit. So as it pertains to this conversation, heat maps, session recordings, things that help you see visual analytics of the web page. And I'm representing Lucky Orange, joining this conversation in my perspective, but I'm also curious to know as we move on how heat maps and session recordings and those types of tools can better serve the needs of this conversation. So during this, but also after that, I'm open for any sort of ideas and conversations as it pertains to how these tools can better support that.
Awesome. Greg, go ahead.
Hey everyone, I'm Greg Guttmann. I'm Director of Product for the Tridian CMS. And this year, we're hoping it's going to be a banner year where we get more and more customers expanding their global footprint. And instead of doing 6 languages on their websites, they do 15 languages on their websites. And they also move from simple cookie cutter websites into websites that are truly localized.
Awesome. Jochen, go ahead.
Yeah, CEO of Esteem and Corion. Most people still know me as founder of Trados. I'm very excited already for years how NMT should actually sunset my creation, translation memory, and CAT tools. And since Gen AI, I'm equally excited about how content creation and content translation should grow together.
Awesome. So I got to be honest, the brains behind this session is really not me. It's Edwin, and Edwin and I talk a lot recently. And in one of our conversations, we started talking about content and content automation and the struggles and challenges that Edwin has with content automation, and we both decided it would be a really great idea to bring some of the brightest minds in localization together to talk about what the future could hold for content optimization. Edwin, maybe you can give us a little better idea of what your specific challenges are and why you really are passionate talking about this topic and why you wanted to bring the group together, what your objective is.
Yeah, thanks for that. Right. So as a nonprofit, we function within a whole bunch of language domains and produce an enormous amount of content. And one of the challenges because of that is the priority paradox, where when everything is a priority, nothing is. So 4 months ago, I woke up and I had this idea about trying to create further prioritization through heat mapping and connecting that with or connecting / data orchestrating that with Google Analytics, custom rules as multiple data sets to create a situation where we have not just hyper automation, but also hyper automated prioritization, which actually Gartner already has can have a word for that already called intelligent automation, which I like that term a lot, intelligent automation. So I think as an industry, I was trying to understand this. I was trying to speak to multiple website analytics companies, including Lucky Orange. And then also I spoke to a number of CMS companies, including RWS Tridian and 40QS as WordPress agency, as well as TMSs, and seeing how can we orchestrate better? How can we create a better prioritization situation, perhaps applying the Pareto principle, but there seems to be a potential and a opportunity to create more powerful intelligence in our automation, and that I thought that could start with companies like Lucky Orange with events and AI-powered heat mapping and that kind of thing. So I was encouraged by Kevin O'Donnell to discuss this idea publicly. So I contacted Stefan, and he was very enthusiastic and supportive. And then Crowden was nice enough to sponsor this event. So I'm very happy to see basically the full range of this idea represented with all of the folks here. So I might just sit back and relax and listen to all the wise men speak.
I think it would be probably a good idea for us on the provider side to kind of get a better idea of how companies establish the criteria and establish what content they are going to localize. So I'm particularly interested whether some of the challenges and things that you are thinking about and how to automate content, multilingual content creation in particular, whether those are some of the same things that Eddie and Sean are thinking about on the buyer side. So how do you guys establish the criteria for localization prioritization today in your organizations?
Yeah, I mean, one way that we help our clients prioritize, right, if localization is the right strategy, really for us and for our clients, it's return on investment. There's a lot of data and studies out there that a buyer wants to do business with an organization in their local language, speaking to them in the way that people speak to them in their local market. An organization that really needs to understand that there's an investment that goes into creating localization technology and for setting up that infrastructure. So it really is, are we trying to, get into a certain market, either through brand awareness or selling a specific product? And then what would be that return on investment, right? Do we already have existing customers within that space, within that language, within that localized market? And does the investment into the localized technology make a lot of sense for us to prioritize certain pieces of content to be either rewritten or to be translated with automation?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of the prioritization. Like, start with the analytics. Like, if you've got information about like what are typical paths to conversions, and if you start to optimize that path, that's the fastest way to get a good return on investment. I'm always amazed when I do a click to convert analysis of like what are all the steps that somebody has to take in order to like fulfill a purchase or things like that. How many blockers there are, additional steps, and maybe there could be consolidation, maybe there could be language optimization, maybe there's like one region that isn't really understanding what you're saying, and it's part of the checkout process. So yeah, I love that as an idea, using analysts as a starting point and the prime driver for figuring out what to fix and what to optimize.
Sean, how is that working at Lucky Orange?
This is something that I've been talking about for probably a year and a half now, to say I think tools like ours can do a lot better for people. And what I specifically mean by that is that it's really one-way conversation with your tools like ours right now. It's a research platform. It provides data in a way that might be easier to consume, but the challenge is finding the story that data is telling you. And if that story is saying you need to prioritize localizing certain content over another, digging through this pile of data is the hard part. And so where everything is heading is definitely in a more predictive analytics sort of space. There's a lot of promise with that. The challenge is that you're still dealing with humans. And in this conversation, you're dealing with humans and human behavior from a wide range of cultures and perspectives. And so building that prediction engine in a way that's trustworthy is the ultimate challenge for us. We're currently working on something where it would be a two-way conversation. You're asking questions of your data, and there are things showing up in our specific competitor set. VWO specifically has a variety of sort of predictive and more enhanced capabilities around AI that can act in this direction. And so I think that the role of the heat map and the role of the session recording, just full playback of the visitor journey on the site, I think those tools still hold value in this way, but if we bypass the need to study a bunch of heat maps, watch a bunch of session recordings, and skip forward to a predictive insight, or even not necessarily a predictive insight, a rear-looking insight, there may be less need for a heat map and a session recording, and you can live in a world where you say, we're going to give you this story in a more automated fashion that can then turn into, okay, well, great. I have this insight about how these people are navigating these sites. To your point, Greg, like, here are the blockers that are happening in the funnel. Maybe it's because of there's a language gap or whatever there might be. Then you can turn that into the content creation engine without spending hours and hours and days watching session recordings or studying heat maps. Of course, they would still exist there to back up that proof point, especially as this still gets, trustworthy, as we still start to trust these AI tools. But that is our battle, right? That's our pushing the boulder up the hill right now. Others will get there before us. We're a small company, but I think that that's the direction that all of tools like ours is heading.
Awesome. Fabio and Jochen, what are you doing to help customers prioritize content better? And are there things that you're working on or thinking about to facilitate that? Either one of you, go ahead.
First of all, of course, we are trying to make the localization process more effective. So we talked about ROI before, and obviously, as you bring the cost down, you have a wider range of localizing. It's not necessarily addressing the prioritization, but it's getting way more languages into reach, which otherwise would be cost prohibitive. Another thing is, when you talk about prioritization, it's not necessarily a binary decision. So do we localize that content or not? Very often the static content of a web page is just static around a dynamic database, which is way harder to localize. So in Europe, we have a situation where, let's say, half of the Europeans speak well enough English to be able to read an English-only website. But if they have to interact with the website, so if they have to search or write something or so on, then it's a totally different story. Then these 50% shrink down to a couple percent. And if it's a specific domain, you have to use your own language because you just don't know the terminology. And there, of course, there are also other solutions in order to enable people, take an e-commerce site, to search in their language in an English database, for example, then display the result in English. And if you then still do not understand what you see, offer machine translation. So there are also it's not a binary decision. There are also, let's say, half localization approaches where you enable customers to interact with the data without having necessarily to translate everything.
Fabio,
From my side, my take would be that what we're doing, we are simplifying the iteration of the process in such a way that you can more quickly adjust to the inputs that you get from users. But before doing so, it's necessary to really work with companies and advise them on what might be the strategies to adopt, because we realize that many times companies are sitting on a real gold mine of information that they don't know about, and oftentimes they don't know how to use it. So first discovering what you have, then start valuing what you have, and then at that point really analyze the goals. So where you want to go. Because when we talk about Church of Christ is a completely different organization from a large retail company. I mean, the goals are different, and therefore I think one should also always have an actionable item that measures is connected with the business goals of the organization. Designing the actual strategy wisely is where we do add our competence in having seen a number of different organizations and being able to ask the right questions and then use the tools that are more suitable, which also change depending on the different organizations because they made different choices over time.
You know,
Awesome.
it's interesting, because we haven't yet sort of gotten into the topic of machine translation. And for the customers who use Tridion and Tridion sites, they're big enterprises. Like we would never suggest to them to use pure machine translation. Typically, if they're going to introduce machine translation, it's machine translation plus a human post-edit, sort of human in the loop to verify, etc. Now, an interesting thing has started to come up with machine translation, which is to translate something from the source language into the destination language and then back into the source language so you can see, and get an assessment like what's the quality of the machine translation, and is this something where it's just going to be a quick review by a translator, or is this something where they're going to really have to dig in and it's much more of a project? So I do think that there's some interesting ways that people are going to start to work with machine translation in the coming years and using some of these advanced techniques to assess the quality of the machine translation for the translator.
All right. Let's bring it back a little bit to content before we get too deep in MT. I would love to know from Edwin, what he thinks would be the most helpful features that could help him automate some of the multilingual content workflows that he's handling. And then I'm going to ask the providers, how they can accommodate those needs, if in any way.
Yeah, that actually touches on a question that I had for Sean right away when he was talking about creating or moving towards predictive insights and various stories that might be able to be told. Because I'm curious what sort of stories can be found possibly in user behavior, because I think user behavior can also possibly reveal what might be very effective content, and I am talking about websites at the moment, of course, because I couldn't agree more with Fabio when he was speaking about making sure that we are objective driven, and that it has to be connected, like, and our tooling and such, and automations, of course, have to be connected to our objective. Like, what is it that we're trying to accomplish, which is different for different organizations. But that being said, even within the Philadelphia Church of God, we do bring people from content to email subscriptions to magazine subscriptions to downloads of literature or orders of literature. So in that sense, it is similar to a e-commerce situation. Even though we're not selling that content, it's all given away for free, but we are still bringing people from easier, like smaller pieces of content to other media, including podcasts and so on. So yeah, so I'm curious to see what sort of stories can be told from data. So I don't know if Sean can already provide certain insights from that point of view, because those are the kinds of features I think that can really help us to automate some of those triggers to use them as triggers to start automation workflows.
Whenever we talk about improving a website, we always start with usability. So that's not really going to key in. There will be different usability standards and expectations from people from around the world. So if you shop on a certain website and that's only available in your region, or you shop on Amazon, you have different expectations of the experience on a website. And so for somebody to be able to use your website, it has to be usable. We always start there. And then it kind of goes into, I like to go into like anxieties and motivations. So everybody brings with them these expectations of usability, but also they're either anxious about your product or brand, what you're asking them to do, what they're committing to, their motivations by buying it. What do they expect it to do? How do they expect it to improve their life? And it may not be as serious as that, but it's some level of anxiety motivation. That's really hard to get at with like a heat map and a session recording. That's more like surveys and customer research. And from that, though, what we can pull in is we can pair usability, fix the on-page low-hanging stuff. The anxiety and motivations, for me at least, say this is the stuff that needs to be prioritized from a content standpoint. And thus, if we're prioritizing localization and which stuff to spend time on, it's the stuff that's really keying into that high-level message of overcoming that anxiety or leaning into that motivation. A lot of this that I deal with on our side is the e-commerce thing, but I think you're right that like there's definitely tie-ins to all kinds of websites by saying this is real people trying to establish or accomplish something on your site. Are they able to do it? Is it usable? And then are you meeting from a messaging standpoint and kind of a call to action standpoint, whatever it is, overcoming those anxieties and aligning with their motivations?
I'm interested in knowing how the other panelists see the future of multilingual content automation. So feel free to chime in and butt on to that argument that Sean just made.
Well, I was going to chime into, sort of the omni-channel aspect to what Edwin was describing. And I think that more and more we're seeing like a content hub type of approach where you'll have a content hub that's not only going to be powering your website, but it's also going to be powering your mobile app. It's going to be powering your newsletters and so on. And I think that having a single content hub not only can help with sort of the consistency of the message, consistency of the translation, but as we're seeing some of these AI, retrieval augmented generation tools come out, having them be able to go after like a single content hub and provide people with answers directly on the website is going to be increasingly important.
Yeah, I know that Jochen has kind of a holistic approach as well with the language factory like that. Is that correct, Jochen?
Yeah, I mean, certainly for getting content localized in an efficient way. But I think for the topic today, it might be good to think even more out of the box and think about, well, when we talk about content, why do we talk about a static piece of text? I mean, the thing is that even with modern content management systems or websites or so, in the end, somebody has written at a given time for a given piece of information for a certain audience, a piece of content. And that's as frozen in time and information as a Babylonian clay table. Of course, we are smarter in arranging them and displaying them and so on, but the piece of content is sitting there and being frozen. So what we are seeing already in the younger generation, when they start to look for information, they're not necessarily Googling and then trying to find the piece of information and content, but they're already asking ChatGPT for an answer. And the thing is, translation in a way reflects, of course, what in the source document was written. So that's a quality criterion, that you don't miss something, add something, rephrase it or whatever. And well, it's not only that you target a certain audience, it's also you target a certain audience in a certain culture. So the thing is that the translation remains a translation. So how about a future where you access content, or let's say information, and the content is created at that point where somebody is asking it, with the information available at that time, with the knowledge and the background of that person, and also obviously in the language of that person. That, of course, would completely change all these workflows, and would also change, of course, the methods to figure out in what languages do we want to have that capability.
Yeah, we're going from a bilingual format to really a multilingual format, but maybe an omnidirectional format as well. Fabio, is Translated thinking about those kind of things as well? Are you?
Well, we just released Lara, which is our large language model dedicated to translation, and that means that what was being said earlier turns into a system that is able to craft basically the translation according to a number of parameters that you have for your customer. So the translation does not exist per se, but there's a semantic concept which is behind that, and then you deploy the best translation according to a number of parameters, which become kind of a prompt for the translation system. This we think is the real direction where we are going. So we craft the initial information, and then we deploy it almost in a personalized way, using not only translation for language, but also translation for the kind of a person that you are talking to. The other day, I needed to do some work for an association that I manage, and I needed to read a website by our public administration. And I realized that I needed a translation from Italian to Italian because I could not understand what was being said. So theoretically, the presentation should be different for a professional who already knows a lot, or a person like myself who has limited knowledge about those kind of more administrative information. And this, I think, is the real challenge that we as we are linguists and we translate, we can address finally, helping to integrate the user inside the translation process.
Eddie, your take on this question.
I mean, I think the future of content automation, for us at least, it really sort of, it zeroes in on the context of the content itself, right? I think today's AI tools and the technology that exists in 2024 is actually really good at translating English to Spanish, or Spanish to Italian, or Italian to German, right? That sort of one-to-one translation has come a long way from the old days of Google Translate, where it got most of the words wrong. But even today, right, and this is a lot of the reasons why we still have to use a human, is it actually isn't giving you things that might be culturally relevant to the localized area, or something that is context relevant. A lot of our clients at 40Q, they're either selling something or trying to sell some sort of product, and just saying the same type of thing in a different language sometimes actually doesn't get the message across in the same way. And the future for us is, as machine learning and neural machine learning advances, not only just translation, but also translating the context and the meaning of the message, so it gets to the audience in the way that it's intended.
Are we getting closer, you think, to a moment in time where a good chunk of the content will be created standalone, maybe, and we're not necessarily going to translate anymore, but we're going to adapt content to specific markets and work directly in a monolingual way? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think we're already there, right? You know, a lot of our clients, they are translating some of their content one to one, but some of the content has to be sort of reworked for a certain market and sort of rebuilt so that it has that same resonance that the original content does.
Any further thoughts? Fabio, go ahead.
I think that what Edis was saying right now really connects well to an experience that I have in the entertainment industry, where you spend a lot of time designing a video game in a way that it can speak the language of the users. But then typically the customer support teams, which actually do get the feedbacks from the users, are not integrated tightly with the localization teams, neither with the design teams. Therefore, you throw away all that knowledge that you can accumulate nowadays, and you should accumulate because you can craft answers to the questions of the users, and actually use those ones to dynamically design the application, to dynamically design the interface. This is, I think, where we should be going. This is where we can put most added value as localization experts.
I just muted myself. That wasn't very effective, I think.
I thought you were speaking.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a pause.
Come on, answer the question now, please. What are some of the ways you think that language service providers could be more helpful to the way the current industry is morphing, you think? What are some of the gaps where we could be more useful? Jochen, do you have an opinion about that?
Yeah, I mean, currently, as the name already suggests, I mean, mostly they are involved in the translation step. And of course, as the translation moves more and more towards automation than in revision or proofreading. But of course, as the quality of NMT and LLMs improve, this work is getting less and less. But somebody needs to create the linguistic knowledge to enable these systems to make a decent work. And particularly if we talk about content generation, somebody needs to tell the system how your organization is calling certain things and how these things relate to each other. So I think over the years, the roles of linguistic experts will move from, let's say, people who are doing words more towards to people who create knowledge and define knowledge and provide multilingual knowledge, which then enables the AI to be based on this human knowledge to translate or to generate new content. So I think they will become true knowledge workers, which in my opinion is great because that knowledge, if kept in, for example, multilingual knowledge graphs or by curating linguistic assets, can be multiplied by the Gen AI, whereas if you're translating, you can only do so many words per day. So that is kind of restricting your output. But together with AI, you can multiply things. And I think that also will have a result or an effect on the question how to prioritize things. I think the prioritization will go towards multilingual knowledge work and less about, do I localize this or not?
Yeah, and you know that's very interesting about the sort of knowledge work aspect, because on the content management side, typically we talk about metadata and taxonomy and categories and keywords and all of those things. And AI has been very helpful in helping people apply that the taxonomy and the metadata to their content, because oftentimes you'll get content authors, they'll write articles and things like that, but they don't really know, well, how do I classify what I've just written? And AI is now providing some really nice tools in order to help with that classification process so that you can apply your standard corporate taxonomy to your content, which then in turn provides the instructions for the downstream AI systems that are then going to consume that content and generate content out of what you've written. So we're in a much better place than before, because there's a lot of, taxonomy systems that really haven't been applied properly within organizations, and you just have, content that's kind of floating around without the context that could really provide the value. So yeah, Jochen, I
second that,
totally agree with
obviously.
your point. Yeah.
And why this is not happening in many organizations is because content creation, content translation often is sitting in different organizations and different departments. Right. And I think this needs to grow together, because both disciplines will work or will use the same linguistic assets. And when you do this, a lot of things already, or a lot of new possibilities open up. And Greg just phrased it already correctly. Suddenly you can use these information structures, these taxonomies, and truly work in a multilingual way.
This is one of the reasons I thought it would be really great to bring content people and localizers together to kind of wrap their brain around that, so to speak, because I do think that there's a lot of silos currently that need to be broken down in order for that to really progress.
That was a good move, Stefan. Totally.
Yeah. So, Sean, do you have any take on what the LSPs are telling you about this? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, maybe less so that. And I was just thinking about how the siloed efforts here, that if you go to an organization and say, we need to combine these efforts, we need to bring these people closer together, they're existing with different KPIs and different measurements. So I think one of the challenges when we start to automate things is you need to rearrange your feedback loop on that, your performance loop, to say, okay, sure, is this hitting the mark from a cultural standpoint? If we're telling a joke in this piece of content, doesn't make sense. Do we need to translate whatever it is? But how do you help those writers? Because as somebody who writes blogs and stuff myself, if you come to me and say, hey, you need to bring this up to par with this other standard, and you need to meet us in the middle, you might need to step it back, whatever it is, you need to change the way you create content. That is going to be an uphill battle. And so I would be curious, kind of throwing the question back out, if there's any way that people have found success working with the creative types who are bringing the knowledge to the table, who want to sit in a quiet room and write for 4 hours and don't want to have to worry about how this will translate and how this will be represented around the world. If there's any path to success there to make better content that is better for the ultimate goal of it being successful across different localized aspects.
How does that work, Edwin, on the inside of your organization when content gets created? Maybe that will help Sean get an answer on his question.
Yeah, this is a great point, and it's definitely putting heads together, because you have to have cross-departmental collaboration. What's really important is what Jochen and Gregory were already talking about regarding having a centralized knowledge. This is a big piece. So actually relatively recently, we were going to produce a video podcast in 3 different languages, but then realized that actually it wasn't quite the right video podcast to select. So we created a new video podcast that was ready to be translated or produced in the 3 different languages, because it was created with that global market in mind. So because we put together the content creators with the localization department in a LangOps way, we were able to centralize knowledge, and they were able to produce source content that was also ready to be produced in target content. So what I find very interesting is the concept of operationalizing the language and source, not just target language, but source language, because I think that traditionally we do actually operationalize target languages with all our various semantic tools, but we don't necessarily do that with our source. So I think that's where knowledge graphs come in. and other semantic techniques. Knowledge graphs are very powerful, and it can actually be the answer to even the business intelligence that we're trying to get to with this prioritization question that we're trying to tackle. So I do think that that's another way that we are actually working on that at the moment, creating domain-specific knowledge graphs that can then allow us to have domain-specific decisions made automatically, but also gather information as customers interact with that, and we create content from that.
Fabio, knowledge graphs and RAG are the future translated as well. Is LangOps the way to go, or is LangOps just another fancy term for localization, like I was told last week by somebody in your organization?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not an expert on this one to answer this question. Frankly speaking, so what I like of what
Altså, der er ingen grund til at trække det ud.
Oh, somebody's got their microphone open.
What I like of what Edwin just said is the fact that you start from what you want to say. So the knowledge is essential because you craft around the knowledge, you craft around the information, what I was saying earlier on. So I think that once you have that clear, then it's the translation is a transformation to an audience, and therefore you craft basically. You can craft it in various ways, and so I like what Edwin was saying, and I think yes, that probably those graphs can become part of the localization process as well.
Yeah. And you know, the interesting thing about the graphs is that it doesn't always just have to be about the content itself, but it could also be how the content could be used. So, for example, you know, is this content that is really appropriate for somebody who's just investigating your products? Is this somebody who is in the journey of like, okay, I'm about to purchase, or is this somebody who's looking for support on the products? Or is this like, you know, an individual customer versus a big commercial customer or a industrial customer? So being able to describe your content from multiple angles and not just, you know, what the content is telling you, I think is really important to bear in mind with the knowledge graphs.
Should our industry be concentrating more on integrating localization systems with content management systems and user behavior tools? Eddie, what do you think?
I mean, just the short answer is absolutely yes. I mean, let me go into content management systems for a second, and I think we've seen this with our clients. A lot of times, you know, you can set up the translations in sort of a separate language provider, service provider. When you have different tools, right, that's going to make an inefficient workflow for your admins, your writers, right, the staff that works for your organization. Having that integrated directly into the CMS is going to have you know, an immense amount of efficiency for translating the content and for your staff to be managing it. We found, and you know, this is even at large institutions and large organizations. If you actually put barriers for translations and for content to be translated to your staff, they're actually going to spend less time on translating, less time on seeing that content is relevant. When it's right there in the content management solution, where either you can use AI to translate it automatically, or even just see the different translations in different languages and make changes directly in the CMS, your actual staff, your users are going to actually, you know, the people that you're actually working with to create the content are going to find it, you know, light years easier to actually manage that, and you're going to get a much better product in the end. I think the same that goes for user behavior tools. You know, we work with a lot of clients in the Latin market, right? So, you know, a lot of our content is originally in Spanish. That actually means, though, that, you know, when you look at the different countries that speak Spanish, Mexico to Argentina to Spain, right? The user behavior we've seen on certain content is different, even though it's in the same language, right? So when you combine a user behavior tool, you can actually see if your localized content is resonating in the specific market that you're trying to break into.
Edwin, does that ring true for you as well? The way we started this original conversation, I got the impression too that you, in an ideal world, you would have access to some tools that allow you to integrate content generation, user behavior, and localization together. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we don't just work in translation within our department. We also work on marketing and content strategy, and that's also why this idea came to the fore, because connecting all these various aspects of what we're discussing today isn't actually very easy at the moment. And that's why I wanted to talk to all of these companies, because I said, okay, what is the way to do this? And at the moment, it seems rather disjointed or very expensive. So I would love to see, as a client, I would love to see more features that integrate user behavior tools with CMS, with TMS, and have a very smooth process, or have the whole thing combined in one location. That would be really good. But I would imagine that that's even more difficult. So in the very first place, I would love to see much deeper integration at whatever useful level it is possible. So if it is on a blog post level or a single product level, that's great. But if it would be possibly even better, depending on the vast quantities that the world is creating content and will increasingly do so. It seems like possibly it needs to be even more, even smaller. But even if it's product based, that needs to be this flow of data orchestration that is just a one beautiful pipeline that we can all look at, and is transparent, and multiple departments can look at that and analyze it and make decisions, whether that's automatic or toggling with human interaction of making custom decisions. So there you go. So there's a challenge right there.
Fabio, your microphone is off. I'm glad I'm not the only ones making that mistake, so we can both look foolish. Go ahead.
Yes, it's yeah. From my experience, purely from the professional point of view of having worked with a number of different organizations, we are still transitioning out of the Excel culture, Excel-based culture after 30 years of the introduction of spreadsheets. And many companies still use Excel for a number of different functions because it's flexible. Because the feeling is that anyway, you are free to choose at one point which direction to take, while you understand which tool would fit best for a specific function. I would be happy to see an answer to Edwin's need in a number of different tools that are able to communicate with each other. Each one of them specialized, because one of them caters from the experience of specific departments, which need to finally integrate all this knowledge together to provide the right content to different users in different places. But I don't foresee in a short term a large adoption of super integrated tools that are able to do everything, because I mean, there's always a point where you stop. For example, in your administrative tools now, kind of they are known on a worldwide level. Although there's a lot of local systems, companies do integrate it. They work on a global level, different systems that talk to each other. So there's a constant redesign of applications, and I think that a good content transformation tool that can interact with different number of different environments would probably be the most likely scenario for the short/mid-term time, I would say.
Yeah. So you're saying that you don't see a definitive move towards integration. Does anybody else on the panel have a different view on that? I'm interested.
I didn't say that. I don't see monolithic solutions to be taking over on a short term. Okay, I didn't say not integration. I do say integration, but through connectors.
So I've got an opinion on this in terms of, there is a split between a translation management system and then a content management system. And in my view, actually, it does make sense. Now, it's got to be integrated nicely in terms of from the content management system, you should have the easy button where you say, translate this into all the different languages. Then the handoff into the translation management system, I think is very powerful because that translation management system can not only handle content that's coming in from the website, but it can also handle Word documents, other types of content that your organization has. And if you've got the translation memory set up, being able to have consistent translations from what your printed documents are to what your websites are, not only will help reduce costs, but it will really give people a better experience. So I do believe in having that split between the two. However, I will say, like, one of the things that has been problematic in the past with that integration is that sometimes you'd have translators who wouldn't understand, what's the context of where this translated content is supposed to live, like what are the visuals, etc. So our solution is typically to not only give translators here's the content to be translated, but then also give them links to the preview so they can actually preview like what they should be translated. Because oftentimes even just the visuals of the website is going to influence the language that they're going to use as part of the translation. So that's my opinion. Like, it's still two systems, but really, really nicely integrated, I think is the way to go.
Jochen, any feedback on those two takes?
Integrating systems is difficult, and because they have their current footprint, their users, and so on, and there's a certain, it's hard to integrate system, not technically, but organizationally. I think what will drive integration is that both activities, content creation and content localization, will be based on the same linguistic assets and on the same resources, and that will drive, I think, the integration. The systems who kind of administer this around, they might coexist for quite a while, but the fact that you need the same assets and creating these assets is expensive and requires expertise in human work, whereas converting these assets into content or into translated content becomes cheaper and cheaper. So that, I think, will drive certain integration, at least from the underlying assets and the organizations who maintain and create them.
Eddie or Sean, you want to chime in on this question?
Yeah, I think the trend in our space has been composability, where we don't have a complete integration with a tool, but we show up inside another tool. And so, for example, with HubSpot, they have CRM cards within each prospect, and you can watch session recordings directly from that prospect without leaving it. That doesn't provide an at-scale solution for this. You're still stuck studying one person. I think that the trend for us then really is the segmentation capabilities. And even within then, you're going to require somebody to spend countless hours segmenting a heat map by each language, by each region, whatever it is. And so really applying an AI solution here would look like a more concise querying of the behavior and saying, okay, these are the things that I care about. These are the segments that I care about. And even better, I can set that up to have an automated report to come back and say, okay, every week or whatever the interval is to look at to analyze the behavior. Here's what I care about. Here are the key events on the page. Look at this on the recurring basis for each language, for each segment. That's not in reach right now, but I think that's where that's going for us.
Eddie?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have to sort of agree with what Greg said earlier. For us, I think, as an organization that deals with creating custom solutions and efficient CMS models, it really does make a lot of sense for us to, not to create a monolith, right? Not a tool that does it all, right? Like a single platform, but really take up like a core CMS like WordPress and then integrate other tools into it and give your users, your staff, the ability to access those tools from within WordPress or within the CMS that you're using, right? It just makes the entire process easier. They can see the context and sort of other assets, media and stuff that is going to be associated with the content, and really just get a clearer picture of where it's going to be and make better decisions and just have a more efficient workflow for updating content.
Maybe the solution and the way forward is to make our types of organizations work together more closely. And Sean, you seem to have really good technology for user behavior analysis and heat mapping, etc. Maybe LSP should be talking to Eddie and Sean and that types of organizations in order to integrate things in a standalone fashion. I wanted to ask you, kind of in closing, we're in the last 5 minutes. I can't believe we've already talked 55 minutes. It went by like this. And it usually goes like this when we have an interesting bunch of people together here. But I would like each one of the participants to kind of tell me what the most promising technological developments are for the localization industry going forward, in your opinion. Maybe we'll start with Fabio, and we'll go around the room. Go ahead.
Well, to me, translation systems that have the capability of judging what is being translated, different options, so prompt-based translation, user customized translation. That's one. The other one would be quality estimation is connected with this one, automatic quality estimation, which helps also in defining, according to budget constraint, time constraint, what you should be reviewing first in case you have to take a decision on levels of review. And the other ones are definitely the automation of media localization. So the subtitles and voice definitely, because of visual communication, learning through visuals is very natural experience, and we are only now deploying the power of all this AI to support that kind of communication opportunity.
Awesome. Jochen, I know you have a hard stop at the top of the hour, so I'll let you go next and give us your vision for the future of localization.
Yeah, for me, it's the synergy between Gen AI and knowledge graphs, the kind of yin and yang between a large language model with implicit world knowledge and the deterministic spelled out and curated knowledge provided by linguists in form of a multilingual knowledge graph.
Eddie?
Yeah, I mean, sort of like saying what I was with, what Johan just said, and then, what I mentioned earlier is just like context-aware translations, right? Taking in, the geography, cultural aspects of the person that you're translating for, and incorporating those into the translations is definitely the future. I think maybe like on another note too, is really just translations of audio and visuals is a kind of a huge thing, which is really growing right now. If you're able to, right today, tools like Vimeo and stuff are able to dub and create subtitles for a video, but we're coming out with technologies now that can actually translate the voice and sort of the talk track of a video or audio tech, and that's really going to be a game changer, I think, for a world that really digests content in those formats.
Awesome. Sean?
Yeah, I think it's turning the qualitative behavioral analysis into the story for people at scale, and really harnessing all the data across the different places where these translated elements are showing up. Eddie used a phrase earlier that kind of stuck with me. It's like content resonance. And so how do we tell at scale that content is resonating in the way that we want it to resonate for the right people? Providing that qualitative approach, but in a way that's digestible, that can inform the knowledge models, the knowledge graph, and stuff like that.
Greg, go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you what my hope is like as things are getting like more efficient in terms of the translation aspect, I really hope that we are going to see like a new generation of websites where you're connecting with people like at an emotional cultural level. And so often there's so many cookie cutter websites, and you think that the website that looks, one way in the US is just applicable across the world. And just being able to change some of those visuals and really, get people engaged at that level, I think it's going to be amazing. And hopefully that's something that we're going to be able to do now that the level of, translating words is start to really get pretty mature.
Edwin, we started with you at the start of the hour, and it's only fitting that we're finishing with you. Give us your vision, and also in an ideal world, after we finish up the roundtable here, what would be a resolution that would make you really, really happy and your localization life a lot easier?
Yeah, thanks for that. I think what's very exciting is connecting all the components that we've discussed today with no code, low code connectors. Shout out to Blackbird. We're a very happy client of theirs, connecting a lot of tools. I think that they have the opportunity to connect a lot of these tools. I think that there's probably also other ways to do that, but that's an easy way for us, relatively speaking. Knowledge graphs is huge. It's huge. Gartner said 50% of Gen AI applications will be using knowledge graphs in 2025. I think we're at the beginning of that. I think many people will be using knowledge graphs in order to guardrail the quality output of AI, which is not just large language model. Of course, it's also diffusion models and so on. I do think that quality estimation, automatic post editing through private, custom, massively multilingual large language models is a huge thing. And then what's really interesting is the ontological approach to organization. So it's a conceptual organization rather than massive departments, like connecting data points that matter to the correct roles. That's going to be huge. I don't think we didn't really even touch on that. We did touch on a little bit. Greg, I think touched on that. Very smart. That's very smart. That's definitely something we need to be exploring.
That's going to be the second installment of this roundtable. We'll have to schedule another one for that. Two of our guests, Sean and Jochen, who had to leave at the top of the hour. I like to keep a clean ship to respect everybody's time. I know we're super busy in our professional lives as well. I've enjoyed this so very much. Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom, your localization wisdom with us from all around the world, from Italy, England, and the United States. I really appreciate your participation, and I've enjoyed this very much. I wish we could go another hour, but the time is up. Thank you very much, and until next time, I couldn't be happier with the results of this. We had a really lively discussion. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Bye, everyone.